Hi everyone. So we're going to look today at the last part really of relative frequency, and this is what you tend to get in exam papers to do with this topic. So there's usually a graph, okay? So it's applying it to a situation, to a problem, and then creating this relative frequency graph, okay? So let's have a look at this question then. So there are 70 sweets in a jar. In a trial, a sweet is chosen at random and then replaced. The graph shows the relative frequency of a blue sweet. So they're looking at how many blue sweets get picked out. So what's the probability of picking out a blue sweet? Okay, so it says in the first 40 trials, 12 blue sweets were chosen. So you can see here, this is the number of trials and this is the relative frequency. Okay, so after 40 trials, there were 12 blue sweets. So we need to plot this on the graph, okay? We need to work out the relative frequency of that. So it's 12 out of 40. And I obviously need to turn that into a decimal so it fits on our relative frequency line. So I would do 12 divided by 40, which gives me 0.3, okay? And all I would do is I would plot this on the graph. So I'd go from 40 up to 0.3, which would be here, and I put a cross on the graph. Okay, so you've got a question like this today to do. All right. Right, now, next question. How many blue sweets were chose after 60 trials? Okay, so after 60 trials, we can see that the relative frequency was 0.25. It's halfway between 0.2 and 0.3. Okay, so to work out how many blue sweets were chosen, then you multiply them by each other. So it's the relative frequency multiplied by the number of trials. Okay, so we're going to do 0.25 multiplied by 60. So 0.25 multiplied by 60. Okay, so there were 15 blue sweets chosen after 60 trials. Okay, right. This is your common question. This is what I talked about during the other lessons. Okay, so which is the best estimate from the graph of the probability of choosing a blue sweet? Okay, so which is the best estimate? Okay, so I'm going to write this down here. Okay, so C, the best estimate will be at 100 trials. Okay, if you wanted to cover your, let me just go back. It's 100 trials because that's the most amount of trials. Okay, in the choosing the sweets. Okay, so you have to pick the highest one. Okay, so because that's the most reliable, isn't it? Okay, you could cover your back here and put the probability, so 0.4. Okay, but what I find is that it could have been somewhere else along this line, 0.4. Okay, so I would make sure that you write how many trials there would have been, and then you could put the probability if you wanted to. Okay, now don't get fooled into thinking that this would be the best probability because it's the highest. Again, that's not how it works, is it? It's all about the more trials you do, the better the probability. Okay, right, the last part, part D. Use your answer to estimate the number of blue sweets in the jar. So we chose 100 trials and that was 0.4. So the probability was 0.4. We want to know then how many sweets there would be in the jar. So we need to multiply it by the number of sweets in the jar, and that's at the very beginning of the question, and there were 70 sweets. So I need to multiply that by 70, okay, and the answer is 28. So it's saying that there were 28 sweets in the jar out of the 70. Okay, so what I want you to do now is I want you to have a go at your two questions on applying relative frequency.